Imagine going to a place in the middle of the jungle on the other side of the world and immersing yourself in a completely new way to live and experiencing love in a way that you've never experienced it before, and then coming home and figuring out how the hell to integrate that into the chaos and noise of New York City. It was humbling, it was awakening, and it has changed how I respond to life. I am much calmer. I am much more responsive rather than reactive. I feel like I have ground underneath my feet. I know that there is nothing that I can't handle, that even in the harshest, darkest moments, there is a small light within me and also light to be seen within others. I know more about myself, more about God, more about life just through the experience of energy in my own body and connecting that with the energy of others and witnessing how powerful it is when people come together to connect to themselves and how much union that creates.
But you're awakening already, right? It's already happening. That's why you're here and why you're listening.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Figuring Shit Out. I'm Vanessa Fontana, I'm your host, and if you're new here, Figuring Shit Out is a collective undertaking on navigating confusion, coming of age, and a guide for those on their journey of inner awakening and self-discovery. I am so excited to talk to you today about a topic that I have not talked about. I went to Bali 6 months ago and did yoga teacher training, and I was in Bali for about 2 months, and it was a very transformative experience that has informed almost every step of my journey since then, not to mention quitting my full-time job in tech before that and taking the leap of faith to pursue this podcast and figure out how to build a business out of my creativity all the while. I lived to tell the tale, but I haven't told the tale yet. And so I figured it's about time to tell the story of my experience in Bali, most specifically around Bali itself, yoga teacher training, what you need to know if you are looking to do yoga teacher training, and sharing my experience as well as my experience in Bali. If you're interested more in the aspect of what it was like for me on an emotional level and what I really learned in a connective way, learnings from my heart, I have a video called Diaries of a Corporate Dropout that follows my journey there. In that video, I read my journal entries from my time there, and you can kind of see the sprouting transformation, as well as the last season of Figuring Shit Out has been all about what I learned from being in Bali. I'm still integrating the experience, so I don't want to spoil it, but it was transformative. Imagine going to a place in the middle of the jungle on the other side of the world and immersing yourself in a completely new way to live and experiencing love in a way that you've never experienced it before, and then coming home and figuring out how the hell to integrate that into the chaos and noise of New York City. That was my experience, but today I'm going to help you guide yours and really teach you what you need to know about Bali and yoga teacher training from my perspective. So I'm going to start off with why I decided to do a yoga teacher training. I did not go into yoga teacher training thinking that I wanted to be a yoga teacher. I have been studying yoga since 2020. During the pandemic, I started doing yoga with Adriene, and yoga was my entry point into everything. Yoga was the place from which all of my spiritual discovery emerged from, and it was really the starting point. And it was a place that I came back to time and time again to find myself in. I did yoga with Adriene's 30-day challenge every single year for the last several years, and yoga has just been part of my practice with myself, my connection to my body. It has allowed me to have a connection with my body. I grew up being very disconnected and dissociated from my physical experience, and yoga for me and for many others was a way to reconnect to the home of myself. So yoga always had a very special place in my heart, and before I graduated college, I actually thought about going to yoga teacher training because I remember going into this next phase of life in the world, potentially moving to New York City, and I didn't really want to. I was really scared and nervous. I didn't want to go straight into the rat race. Little did I know I'd be leaving it a few years later, but it was really hard to conceptualize having gone from studying to directly into a corporate job. And so I subtly started thinking about doing yoga teacher training. And at the time, the people around me were not very supportive of that. They were like, why would you go to school and get this degree just to go across the world and do yoga teacher training in a country you've never been to? And I didn't really entertain it beyond that. but it was always something that I had thought in my brain I'd wanted to do, and something that I felt called to pursue. I always felt this deep respect to pay to it, this homage to the ancestry and to the ancient knowledge that it had to offer. And I was just craving to learn more about it. And so I knew that I would do yoga teacher training at some point. And when I got to this teetering edge of a cliff I was on in wanting to leave my corporate job in tech, but not exactly knowing how to make the transition from corporate tech girl to podcast host full time, I knew that I needed a space in between. New York is a really crazy place to live. It's a very chaotic place to live. And I was definitely on the hamster wheel in the rat race. And my experience knowing that I wanted to do yoga teacher training and knowing that it would happen at some point in life, and also knowing that I would need a breath in between switching gears from corporate to creative, meant that I was on the search for something to rest my eyes, heart, and soul. And for me, yoga teacher training was a natural next step. So when I was trying to figure out what I needed to do, I knew I needed to leave my job. I knew that I wanted to pursue this podcast and figure out what this could be, but I knew that I needed to rest. I craved deep, deep rest. I was so burnt out that all I was craving was just being in a jungle surrounded by loving people with the ability to close my eyes. And that's what yoga teacher training gave me. I knew that I wanted it to be in Bali. I was attracted to Bali. It seemed like this magical, mystical place. I didn't even know where Bali was on the map. And I think that this is actually an experience that a lot of people have. I don't think that we realize as a collective society in the West, at least, how far Bali is. It is literally on the other side of the world if you are in New York. Like, it is the other side of the world. It took 24 hours to get there, and that was without any layover. I had like 30 minutes between flights. So yeah, it's really far, and it's a very different place. It's not what it's painted out to be on Instagram. That is not all that there is to Bali. I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a bit, but essentially I was attracted to it, and I knew someone who had been there, and I just started to see a lot of people go there. And so I just said, okay, this seems like a place to be a wanderer, a traveler for a little while. And I also knew that it was a relatively safe place with a lot of infrastructure to support travelers, especially women solo travelers, which is what I was going to be. So I decided it's going to be Bali and it's going to be yoga teacher training. That was my next step. I am in a long-term relationship, so I think that this is also something that we need to consider. I am in a relationship with someone who is in a touring band, so we are used to having time apart. It was not a stranger to our relationship. With that being said, 2 months apart across from each other on opposite sides of the world is something that you should probably take into consideration if you're going on a solo trip and you have a partner, and something that you should talk to them about and make sure that you're prepared for the trials and tribulations that come with that. I believe that it's something that will make you stronger, and it will really allow trust to form in your relationship and strengthen the bonds and binds of trust in your relationship with your family, with your friends, with people who may be scared for you or scared of their relationship falling without you around. But I think it's really important that if you have that call, you listen to it, even and especially if you're in a relationship, and see how that relationship might be able to be supportive throughout that process. Okay, so now on to choosing a yoga teacher training. So this was a task. There are so many yoga teacher trainings of all different shapes, sizes, prices, and experiences. If you are deciding on a yoga teacher training and you're really overwhelmed by all the options, what I would say is, one, where do you want to go? So choosing the location is really important. I knew I wanted to go to Bali, and then I knew I wanted to go to Ubud. 2, what are your non-negotiables and what are you looking to get out of it? And 3, what is the most important thing to you? And then deciding it from there, narrowing it down on there. And then 4, using a thing that you'll probably learn a lot about in yoga teacher training, your intuition, to decide which yoga teacher training to choose, and then trusting that it's the right one. Especially in Bali, I think that the first thing you need to get clear on is, where do you want to be? So I knew that I wanted to be in Bali. I didn't really know what that entailed, but I did know that I wanted to be in the jungle. When I closed my eyes and I saw myself at yoga teacher training, I saw myself at the shala that I did yoga teacher training at. I felt the lush, green, moist air on my skin. I felt the connection all around me. I could see myself in the jungle, but I could also see myself at the beach. I could also see myself connected to water. So I knew that during my experience in Bali, both would be part of that experience, but yoga teacher training specifically, I think that there is no better place to do it in Bali other than Ubud. Ubud is the spiritual capital of Bali, and it essentially has everything that you would need to discover and learn about yoga and still be connected to its roots without going to India. India is obviously a great choice if you have the ability to do that and if you feel that's right for you. For me, I wanted more of a relaxed experience, and I also wanted to meet other solo travelers. I think that one day I will definitely travel to India, but for this initial yoga teacher training, I had other needs, which were one, to just explore the world and explore more of myself, go to yoga teacher training, and to have some time afterwards to integrate the experience and travel around with the people that I'd met from the yoga teacher training. So I gave myself a lot of time to figure out which yoga teacher training that I wanted to go to. And what was important to me when I really thought about it was community and people. So I wanted to be around people who were going to be close to my age. I knew that I really wanted to be around people who were in their 20s, figuring shit out just like me. And so that was what became increasingly important to me as I started to research. And I know that they say you shouldn't go to a program with more than 25 people because then the teaching becomes a little bit less personalized, but personally, I liked being in a large class because I felt like I could connect with everyone in the group. And over the course of 3 weeks, we all grew really close. And I felt like I was able to connect with everyone because you're literally with these people every single day for every single second of the day. So you grow close really quickly, especially with the bonded and shared experience. Another important thing for me was affordability. The yoga teacher training that I went to, which I forgot to even mention, was House of Om. And I went to the Melati location. So House of Om has a lot of different locations, and they have ones that are more north in the mountains, and they have locations that are more north of Ubud. I think that's Amertham. They have a location that I almost chose in the mountains called Pelaga. And then they also have the mansion, which is in Ubud. It's in like the city center of Ubud. And then they have Melati. And Melati really spoke to me because I didn't want it to be such a crazy amount of people that there were several yoga teacher trainings being run at the same time in the same location. I know that the mansion did that. And I also wanted to have the remote-like experience, but still be able to walk around the city and explore Ubud. And Melati gave that advantage. It was also a newer location that they were still building. So we were the only group in the training. And I believe that now or at some point they were going to be running a few trainings at once. And I think that for me, I didn't necessarily want to be a yoga teacher. I was open to the discovery of that happening, but I knew that I wanted to connect with people and I wanted to be able to experience Bali fully, which meant that affordability was really important to me. Yoga teacher training ranges from anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 or $6,000, depending on where you go and how long you choose to go for. I'll talk a little bit more about the actual cost and the breakdown in a second, but for me, House of Om was the most affordable and it kind of checked all the boxes that I was looking for. And because I didn't want to be a yoga teacher, that wasn't why I was going. It was important for me to just get an understanding and a depth of knowledge of yoga and also be taught in Hatha and Vinyasa, which is what we spent most of the time on. They also did 1 week of Ashtanga. I will say it was good to learn about Ashtanga and it was good to learn about the roots of it, but we didn't really get to spend a lot of time with it. And I believe that it was a little bit rushed. While I would recommend House of Om, I think it's important that you really consider what you want out of the training because I could see how the quickness and the pace at which they go for the training can be a little bit much for some people. It was a lot of information in a short amount of time, but you have to think about what you're paying for. You are paying for the room and the board, the meals, the food was so good. It was just really earth-based, plant-based, a lot of tofu, which was not normal for a lot of people. And I know a lot of people experienced some stomach problems because of all the soy-based meats. So that's something to just think about and keep in mind. And I also roomed with one other person. I would have done a quad room because it looked like those were really fun. And the people who were in the quad rooms had immediate friends. Not that we all didn't make friends with each other, but I had one roommate. I loved her. Shout out Fiona. But it was a really great experience. And I paid a little bit more for a double. It was all that they they had available, like I said, and I really enjoyed the fullness of the experience. House of Om, I think, understands that yoga teacher training is an intimate experience where you're sharing a relationship with other people in this bonded way, but you're also going through a lot of personal things as you go through it. And so they create some space for you to connect with people emotionally and share how you're feeling. I think that the way that they did this was a little bit forced, but it did allow us to grow closer and connect with one another. So I would be prepared for yoga teacher training to impact you at an emotional level, at a physical level, and for the experience to bring up a lot of joy in you, a lot of pain in you, and just things that have been underneath the surface. You know, you are sitting there with your body for several weeks, and our bodies are things that we don't pay attention to. We try to escape, we try to avoid. And even if you practice yoga but you haven't gone to yoga teacher training is the extreme of practicing yoga. And so because of that, you are going to be in touch with yourself at a physical, emotional, and energetic level in a way that you maybe have not been. And that's a beautiful thing to experience and a beautiful thing to share with other people as well. So I would be prepared for, if you go to House of Om or you go to any yoga teacher training, for that to be part of the experience. I do know that the Milati location, because we were the only group in that location, it was just a really beautiful shared experience. There was no drama. There was 29 women. Their other location, the mansion, seemed to me, at least, this is my opinion, more of like an Instagrammable experience, but it was a bit less grounded in the community aspect, if you will. Those were my observations. I know that every yoga teacher training is different. Every group is different. It changes a lot. I think that the teachers were so amazing. I think we got blessed with the most incredible teachers. One of them, Samton Kriya, was on my podcast. She's a Kriya yoga teacher. Himalayan Kriya yoga is something that I never knew about until going to yoga teacher training. And it's all about expressing your true self through your body. And it's a form of yoga that's unlike any form of yoga. And it's for deep, deep healing of trauma and connection to yourself and to your life force. And I have a whole podcast episode with Samton on that. So if you're interested in learning more about that and exploring working with Samton and also seeing where she teaches at House of Om, I would recommend that. On top of that, we had a diverse range of other teachers who were also really helpful in the process. So what was important to me was affordability, community, teachers, and room, board, and food. I wanted all of that included. Some yoga teacher trainings don't include food. They only include 2 meals a day. Some don't include room and board. I wanted all of that taken care of because for me, my intention going to yoga teacher training was to rest my eyes in the jungle and to reconnect to myself after a long period of burnout. And so what was important to me was that everything was taken care of, that I was taken care of, and that I met people who I felt safe with. And of course, you can't exactly anticipate that, but that was my intention going into it. And when I was deciding on yoga teacher trainings and there were so many options, I really just had to say to myself, I know how I want to feel out of this. I want to feel connected and loved and supported, and I want to be a better friend to my body. And I just have to trust that this yoga teacher training is going to help me realize those things. Now, I researched everywhere, I watched videos, and I filled my brain with a lot of noise trying to get all of the information that I possibly could. But I think at the end of the day, when I got really quiet and I saw myself in that shala, in that jungle, I knew that it didn't really matter where I went as long as I was excited about it. And so I would just say, don't have any resentment towards the yoga teacher training for any reason. Don't go into it being like, I chose this amazing experience, but it's so expensive and I'm putting myself in debt to do it. I think that the best way to go about it is to have a relationship with it that feels neutral and also feels like it can be fulfilling. I knew House of Om had a lot of critiques online about how many people they take into their trainings and just a few things that I'd read, but I think that that's going to happen when a yoga teacher training is running so many programs and they have a lot of volume of students. And so I think that's to be taken into account too. With a larger volume comes more room for critique. And there are definitely things about it that weren't super intimate or connected or personal. I mean, it's 3 weeks of hatha, vinyasa, some ashtanga, deep exploration of concepts. You are in class from 6 a.m. every day till 7 p.m. at night. it's a lot all at once, but that is what you're paying for. You are paying a little bit less to have more baked in, but you still are getting the experience, and you are with people who are prioritizing the same things as you in terms of affordability and community. So that's what you get. So there's always going to be some type of trade-off with anything that you do. And so I would just go into it really trusting your intuition, trusting your gut, and not exactly allowing online forums to guide you, but asking around, asking people in your life who are yoga teachers, asking the yoga teachers at your studio, deciding if you actually want to go across the world to do it. Now, I think that's an amazing way to do it. I think that there's so much to learn in that. I also think that yoga teacher training is for anyone. I don't think you have to want to be a yoga teacher. I don't even think you have to really practice a lot of yoga, because you'll learn how to do it in the program. That's what I also really liked about House of Om. It felt very accessible for people who did not have a yoga practice already. There were people in the training who had never done yoga before, which was insane to me. Like, that's such a risk to take, to go to yoga teacher training and decide you want to learn how to be a yoga teacher but have never done yoga before. But that was the type of training that it was, is that it was accessible to all people. It was just very, very emotional, I would say, and a very cathartic experience in a short amount of time that I think needs necessary processing both before and after. That was something that I did that I do not regret, especially because I went to the other side of the world and I was in a completely new place, and it was such a culture shock. I am so glad that I gave myself 2 weeks before yoga teacher training to get my mind and body prepared for it, and to also explore Bali, understand Bali, to set my intentions, go to yoga teacher training, and then also leave a few weeks afterwards to explore Bali with the new friends that I'd made, integrate, think about what was next for me in my life, and to really kind of consolidate some of those things that I learned. I would say if you are going across the world, to really make it count if you can. Of course, not all of us have that availability or that flexibility, but if you can book a one-way ticket, I highly recommend it, because it adds to the experience of exploration and allowing yourself to really go through the experience with a presence that maybe you won't have if you're just thinking about it as an in and out case scenario. I believe now, being outside of yoga teacher training, that the real yoga teacher training starts after yoga teacher training. It starts when you become a teacher of any sort. It starts when you learn how to integrate the yoga and the experiences into your life. And if you can go into it feeling open and excited for what you're about to discover about yourself, then that's truly enough. And I think the best advice that I can give is don't stress too much about where or what or how or what could go wrong. Just be excited for the transformation that you are about to embark upon, because it's going to be amazing and you're going to come out the other side a different person. I certainly did, and I will talk about the changes in me and my life since yoga teacher training at the end of this video. If I could summarize that, I would recommend that you know your non-negotiables. Why do you want to do yoga teacher training? Do you know that you want to be a teacher? Are you just looking to explore yoga more? Are you looking for a place to rest your mind, heart, and body while also sharpening it? And when you close your eyes and you think about this experience, where do you see yourself? What are the elements? What does it feel like when you're there? What air do you feel on your skin? What do you smell? What sounds do you hear? What would you hope to learn, and who would you hope to meet? What excites you the most about it? For me, like I said, the community aspect was so important. I never got to go to camp as a kid. And so for me, I was like, this is like camp. I get to go to camp. I get to just be in the jungle for 3 weeks and meet all these new friends. It was really healing for me to be in a classroom again too, because as a kid, I used to love raising my hand and asking all these questions. And when I got a little older, I got really shy and I stopped doing that. And so going back to a student-like experience was just really healing for me. And it made me realize how much I missed being in school, and how much I love being a student, and how much I love also the idea of being a teacher, but how being a teacher is so inextricably bound with always being a student and never stopping being a student. And so that's what it really reminded me of. But I would just really get clear on what your intentions are, what's really important to you, and then from there you can narrow it down. And also, when you listen to that intuition in your heart of what it looks like when you are thinking about doing it, what do you feel? Because that will guide you more than anything. Now, moving into the Bali section, more specifically. Now, I chose Bali because I had a friend who lived in Bali, so I had access in some way to understanding what it was like there. You don't have to have a friend there, but I think it definitely helps. I want to talk about misconceptions or preconceptions that I had, and I think that some people have going into Bali. Bali is marketed and seen as this very spiritual, mystical, far off land and place that is going to completely immerse you in nature and the jungle and beauty. And I think that that idea does not leave room for the fact that Bali has a local tradition, and the reason that it is so special is because of the Balinese Hinduism that is so deeply a part of the Balinese history and the Balinese people. Without Bali's people, without Bali's earth and land, Bali is not this magical, mystical place. The gentrification in recent years of Bali and the lack of infrastructure to support how rapidly growing Bali is was something that I don't think I was prepared for, nor anyone, because when you see it from the outside, you don't really understand the depths of it. Bali is a beautiful place, but when I was there, what I learned is that what makes it beautiful is the tradition. It is the people, it is the local customs, and it is the way that so much spirituality education has been built around that. But there is obviously a part of that that we need to be very conscious of when we're traveling there. We need to respect the people. We need to respect the land. We need to make sure that we are tipping them. We need to make sure that we are granting them the same courtesy and service and respect that they grant us. The thing that I realized the most when I was in Bali is that the people are so kind and so humble and just so of service to you as a person there. Of course, they are working for their money, but they do so with such an open heart. And I'm speaking for the general experience there. And I think that that's something to really explore while you're in Bali. That is not something I was really prepared to hold the space for. When you get to Bali, you land in the south in Denpasar, and that is about an hour and a half away from Canggu. The traffic in Bali is really, really bad. They, again, like I said, do not have the infrastructure to really support the amount of people who are there. And so a lot of people ride bikes and motorbikes. That's how you will get around, through a service called Gojek or Grab. That is essentially an Uber on a motorbike. It's very, very fun. But you get there and you obviously probably have to take a car because you have a lot of stuff. So be aware that you're going to be sitting in traffic for a while. While Bali is not very big in terms of how large it is very culturally diverse. It is very different and dense and has so many different sides to it. Canggu is very lively. There's a lot to drink. I was not there to drink, so getting there and seeing that and seeing all of the noise and the craziness and just the motorbike traffic and the lack of sidewalks was very alarming to me right away, and I knew that I was not in the right place. I booked a 10-day stay in Canggu before my yoga teacher training, and I ended up having to move to a different part of the island. I went from Canggu to Sanur. Sanur is not as well known. It's very quiet. It's beautiful beaches. The water there is also very calm and very still. And I went from staying in Canggu for a couple days, giving it a chance, but I just knew it wasn't for me. And so I very quickly just decided to go to the other side of the island, get the peace I was looking for. I highly recommend stopping in Sanur. It was very beautiful, calming. It was a great place to rest my mind and body before I started yoga teacher training. I was able to start creating there as a first step to taking a hiatus from the podcast. I was feeling very creative, and so it holds a special place in my heart. I got an Airbnb there that was really beautiful. Another thing about Bali is that dogs are everywhere. There are so many unleashed dogs, and these dogs are kind of like the community dog. That's how I understood it, where someone would have a dog, but that dog would just go out and about all day, go through its dogly adventures. And there's a lot of strays, but then there's a lot of dogs with collars that I think are just part of the community, and people take them in and feed them. It's almost like having stray cats that hang out outside your door, and you feed them and you give them kind of a home, but they're not really your cats. You kind of just adopt them. That's how like the dog culture is there. I know that they tell you not to pet them. They were all relatively friendly, which I think is a reflection of the people. I want to touch on again the fact that Bali is a third world country. It is not this luxurious destination, and there's going to be a lot that you are going to see, especially if you're coming from the West, that is going to open your mind and expand you as a Westerner into what Eastern tradition is like, and also into what a third world country looks like, and the dichotomy between the locals and how they live and how they work hard for money that just keeps them going, and how gentrification is moving them out, and how people with a lot of money or who maybe are middle class somewhere else come to Bali and they can live like kings. And there is, something to be said about the fact that what makes Bali special is the land, and it is how the people take care of their land. There is incense lit at several times a day, offerings made to their gods, temples everywhere with people going to ceremony, and it's such a big part of their culture, their community, and it's to be respected and understood and really learned about while you are there. So I deeply encourage you to do that. And at House of Om, we had a Balinese priest host the opening ceremony, and that was a beautiful experience, and it was a water purification experience. So if that is not part of your yoga teacher training, I would highly recommend going to some of those purification experiences, seeing the temples, understanding more about the culture and the history, and understanding more about the local traditions of Bali, and also understanding how you can contribute while you're there to the cleanliness of the island. There's a lot of trash everywhere. It is really sad to see what the construction is doing to Bali, and how Bali is being treated by this infrastructure coming in and essentially taking over the land. And so if you can even do a beach cleanup one of the days, that was part of our yoga teacher training. We went to the beach and we picked up trash. Anything you can do to give back to this land that has given to so many people and is also not your land. Like, you are a foreigner, you are a Westerner, and you come to it from a place of curiosity and discovery. But I would really highly encourage you to blend and mend with the people as much as you can, the people who create the space and make the space. I'm very, very passionate about that, just because I, even as a nomadic, silly Westerner, went to Bali not really realizing the depth of what a third world country looked like. I know that that comes with a lot of privilege for me to say that, but I just think it's important that you are aware and prepared for how you can be of service in that way, and how you can go to this place that is visited and frequented by so many Westerners, so many people, because of its beauty and because of its accessibility, and how you can make it better rather than just going and taking from the land and taking from what will make you more whatever it is that you're trying to be by going there. I didn't expect my view of Bali to expand my view of the world so much, but I think just having never even been to Asia, I was expanded beyond my understanding and knowing of what the world looks like and is, and how big and vast the world is, and how traditions and customs vary so much from place to place, and how Eastern tradition really does take a step back and look at the world differently and approach the world differently, and how much Eastern and Western traditions can blend together, and what that looks like when they're not opposing forces as much as they are collective parts of an entire world. And so I learned a lot from being in Bali, and I would recommend, if you have the ability to stay there for longer than a month, that you do and you explore. Overall, Bali is a very diverse place, and it has a lot of different places to explore. The things I would be prepared for are the flights, the travel costs of the flight, understanding how truly far away it is from wherever you are. From New York, it is 24 hours away. So that is going to be a big adjustment for your body, for your brain, for your circadian rhythm. And if you're doing yoga teacher training across the world, I would recommend giving yourself some time to adjust to being across the world before you start yoga teacher training. That is such a good thing that I did. And then also get to explore the place that you're in afterwards if you are able and you have the ability to book the one-way ticket. Book the one-way ticket. I'm going to touch very briefly on visas. So you need a traveler visa to go to Bali. If you are from the US or UK or Europe, you have a plan to go to Bali, apply for your visa at least 2 months before you leave. I didn't do that. I did it 2 weeks before because it said it would be ready in 2 weeks, and it was not ready in 2 weeks, and I wasted $50 to do it. And then I had to just get another visa at the airport. You can get a visa on arrival. So if you're going and you don't have the time to wait, then you can just get a visa on arrival at the the airport. But that was a very stressful thing, getting off the plane and then having to have my internet connect, which it wasn't connecting, and get a visa and be let into the country. I was really stressed, and I really wish I would have gotten my visa sooner and I would have applied for it sooner. I did not do that though. I waited until the very last minute, and I kicked myself for doing that, especially because I had to renew it in yoga teacher training. Since I got it on arrival, I wasn't able to extend it. If you apply before, I'm pretty sure you can get a 60-day visa, or you can extend it online, but I had to get it on arrival, so I had to extend it, and I had to go through and use a service to do that, and I had to give them my passport, and it was fine. It all worked out, but I ended up spending another, I think, $60 or $70 on visas when I'd already spent $50 for a visa that was approved halfway into my trip. So give it about 2 months of getting that visa before you travel. You can get it at the airport, but if you're planning to stay longer than 30 days, that is something that you're going to need to take care of while you're there. And it is not something that you want to lag on, because they will charge you every single day that you're there without a visa, and you will have to pay that at the airport. This is another thing too. The Balinese police and infrastructure government, etc., there's a lot of bribery going on, and the police are not necessarily your friend there. So as much as possible, stay out of trouble. Don't drink and get on a motorbike. Don't not pay your visa. Be very cautious and careful. Try not to drink alcohol maybe across the world, unless it's a bottle of wine that comes from a bottle and you can see it. Just try to really be conscious and aware of the differences of being across the world and how that might affect the things that you're consuming, the things that you're doing, and also the way that you interact with the people in the land, and respecting it as much as possible, because you don't want to get involved with the police in Bali. You just don't. I also know that there are people who rent motorbikes while they're there and they don't have a license to drive a motorbike. Just be careful, be aware, be careful. Don't be stupid. Don't do anything that you wouldn't do in your own home country just because you think you're in a different place. Just be aware, just be careful, and make sure that you're always with people if you can be. Obviously, I was a solo traveler for the first few weeks of the trip. I really recognized and realized how on guard I was as a solo traveler, and that almost kept me from being kind to people at first. I think coming from New York City, especially, where you really have to be, looking around your surroundings. You don't make eye contact with people. It's not polite to smile at people. It's really just like a mind your own business place. Going across the world, being in a completely new environment, and then taking that mindset with me, I learned very early on didn't really serve me, and that I would be a lot more safe if I just relax and I just allow this experience to happen. Of course, still be cautious, be aware. I mean, you're literally getting on the back of a motorbike, some random man's motorbike, to go anywhere. So you have to have a certain level of trust to do that, and a certain awareness about you to just know that it's going to be okay. If you can have someone to call, if you can make a friend early on who lives there, who you can trust, even the people who are staying at your accommodation or the people at your accommodation. I would say overall, be careful about Airbnbs. What you see is not always what you get, and read reviews. Reviews are so important. You also want to make sure that your Airbnb or wherever you're staying is road accessible if possible, meaning that you can get to it on the road, or there's a road that you can take to get to it. There's a lot in Bali that, like I said, there's not a ton of infrastructure. So one of the Airbnbs I stayed in was beautiful. I loved it. It was like you had to walk through this dirt road in the jungle to get to it, which was a little daunting considering I had all these bags and things and I was by myself. So that's really just something to be aware of. I would also urge you to consider what type of traveler you are. For me, I really like to nest wherever I am. I like to drop in and spend time in the space. I like to be at home. Even when I'm abroad, I'm not a big let's see everything in one day person. I like to really get to know and explore an area and make friends with a neighborhood rather than go from place to place. So that's another thing. What is important to you when you travel? Because that will inform your Airbnbs, how much money you spend, how much you're willing to go in terms of budget towards Airbnbs. Now, leading into budget, I am going to talk about finances and the cost of the trip. and the cost of yoga teacher training. Yoga teacher training can range anywhere from $2,000 to $6,000 just for the training. And it depends on what you're getting. For me, like I said, what was important was room and board and food and the training itself. And the most affordable option was House of Om. Like I said, I was not able to get the quad room. I would have if it was available, but I got a double, and that ended up being $2,400 for the yoga teacher training itself. My flight to Bali one way was $1,300. It was Emirates. I would really recommend buying a good flight and not trying to book with different airlines and saving money on your flight. This is a opinion that I have just because the flight is so long and there's so much that could go wrong in that transit that you don't want to worry about where is my bag going to end up? Am I with the same airline? What's going to happen? You want all of that guesswork to be taken out as much as possible. Emirates has a flight if you're flying out of New York City to Bali, as well as I think San Francisco on that side of the world. You might have to take a few flights, but it's going to take a while to get there. It is 24 plus hours and it is a long flight. So be prepared for that and be prepared to spend a pretty penny on the flight itself. Again, like I said, I booked a one way. I would say I ended up spending about another $1,000 to get home. I ended up going to the UK afterwards, and then from the UK, I flew home. So it was not cheap to fly there, nor was it cheap for the yoga teacher training, but the experience itself was such an investment. And then while I was there, I spent around $1,500, I'd say, on food and life and transportation and just being there, which honestly is very cheap for being there for 2 months. Bali is a more affordable country, so the food there is super cheap. You know, you can get a really, really nice accommodation for a couple of $100s a night, or you can spend $20 a night. There's everything in between there. So that is the good thing about Bali. I would say in total, the cost of my trip was about $5,000 for 2 months. But I will say, if you live in a place that you can sublet your room, that helps a lot. I subletted my room, which covered the cost of flights. And I'm going to talk about this in another video about leaving the rat race and how to prepare financially for something like that, because I saved money for about a year before I left my job. And I calculated my monthly expenses around like $4,000 to $5,000 a month living in New York. And I wanted to have at least 6 months of a cushion without having to change anything about my life so that I could leave, figure out my next step, and have space. So that's the cushion that I built more as like a long-term understanding. But in terms of justifying being away and traveling for 2 months, I didn't really spend much more than I would have spent on rent and living in New York City for it. And because I subletted my room, I was able to justify the cost. And I was also able to write it off as a business expense because I host this podcast and I do generate some income from this podcast. For me, the investment was about my physical health. It was about my mental health. It was about really allowing myself this experience to breathe for the first time in my life. I wanted space, I craved space, and I knew that I needed it after being in this rat race machine for so long. I needed to recalibrate my brain and body to a place that I could rest. I wanted my nervous system to be supported. And when I left my job, I was so scared. Like, even though I had savings and I had money and I had some money coming in, I was terrified. I didn't know what was next. And I needed to be in a place where I could just tend to what was happening in my body. And yoga teacher training gave that to me. I am still unraveling and unpacking the lessons that I learned there, and the teacher training is giving back to me so much because I'm actually teaching courses that I'm using the ancient techniques of yoga and the philosophy of yoga as an underpinning of. I'm not necessarily teaching yoga, but I'm teaching a lot of yogic inspired philosophy that blends and merges into the psychology, self-development, and spirituality niche that I am in, not only on this podcast, but in my own personal courses. I have a course called The Road Less Travelers, and it is all for people who are wanting to take a leap of faith and understand more about themselves, their path, and maybe follow a creative calling. That really is what yoga teacher training is. It is a giving back to yourself. It is one of the most loving things that you can do for your brain, body, mind, and heart. And I really do believe that anyone could get anything out of it, even if you don't want to be a yoga teacher. I didn't go into it wanting to be a yoga teacher. I think I'll teach yoga in several ways in my life, maybe never in the traditional way. Maybe I will will, but I definitely feel like it was the right thing for me to do. And I knew that in my heart, and the experience that unfolded before me when I chose to do it is something so special that I will cherish forever. It changed my relationship with my body so deeply by allowing me to see it as an energetic vessel. It allowed me to deeply connect to my heart space and see that love truly is the underpinning of everything good in this world, and that oneness is our true state. And I know that that is such a wow, this girl went to yoga teacher training in Bali. Like, that's such a statement that someone like that would make, but it's so true. It was just so beautiful, and I loved every single moment, every single second of it. I think of it every single day. I don't necessarily wish to go back because I know that it informed my steps forward, but I know that I'm going to continue to explore yoga in whatever capacity that it comes, and meditation, and continue my education and learning in any way that I can. Being a student is so special, and it was so healing to be one. It was humbling, it was awakening, and it has changed how I respond to life. I am much calmer. I am much more responsive rather than reactive. I feel like I have ground underneath my feet. I know that there is nothing that I can't handle, that even in the harshest, darkest moments, there is a small light within me, and also light to be seen within others. I know more about myself, more about God, more about life just through the experience of energy in my own body, and connecting that with the energy of others, and witnessing how powerful it is when people come together to connect to themselves, and how much union that creates. The Sanskrit word in yoga is yuj, which means union, which means togetherness. And that is really what I experienced while in yoga teacher training. Like I said, I think anyone could benefit from yoga teacher training. If it's a path you feel called to, I would encourage you to explore it. You don't have to want to be a yoga teacher. If you feel called to it, you literally do not know what will emerge. So if you have the ability to book that one-way ticket, you can save for it, you can project for it, you can really work towards it. I believe that if you want it bad enough, you will make it happen. So if you have any questions about any of that, thank you guys so much for listening. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend. Make sure you follow and subscribe and rate the podcast on your preferred streaming platform. And remember, if you spend your whole life trying to get your act together, you don't have a life, you have an act. So go live your fucking life. I love you so much, and I'll see you next week. Bye.